Now, we all know that Brandon Payne is a truth teller on this program. I mean, Maze, we've had him many times where he calls his shot and we think, oh, he's being bold or he's saying something that's a little hot take, maybe just to get it out there.
Sometimes.
But I kind of feel like, Maze, I owe him an apology. Yeah.
For what?
That's right. He texted me on the morning of February 7th. That was right after the trade deadline. And he sent me a text, and it reads right here, guys. The Lakers are good enough to win the championship this year.
Okay.
There I said it, Brandon says. Lakers-Cavs finals. End text. And I'm sitting here be like, man, this is getting a little too excited over this Luka Doncic trade. They don't have a center. LeBron's 40 years old. And Brandon comes out here and says...
Did they have a center when he sent that text? Did they have a center who then got sent back?
That's a good question. Well, let's bring in Brandon and ask him. Did you say that with the assumption that Mark Williams was in the trade and still going to be a Laker?
I did not. I did not take that into account, believe it or not. I did not. I was basing it just on the Luka LeBron dynamic and the ability to make those around them better. And I'm also a firm believer in JJ Redick, just like I am in Kenny Atkinson. And I think that they're both doing a great job with their teams. And, I watch the Lakers and some of the things they run after timeouts, and I'm just blown away. And I think they're doing a good job. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to win it. I think that they are good enough to have a chance to win it.
Wait, don't backpedal now. You can't do that.
Yeah, hold on.
I'm not going to backpedal.
Define what's a chance? What is a chance?
Well, I think that they have more pieces available to them to be kind of flexible in how they approach opponents.
I don't want to cut you off.
I got you.
I'm not asking about the Lakers. I'm asking, define what a chance to win it means, because I think that then informs the rest of the conversation.
Yeah, I think they're good enough to win the Western Conference to put themselves into the finals.
Okay, now you can give us your cockamamie explanation.
Okay. No, I just think that I think that when you have a situation where in a playoff series you're going to have the two best players on the floor in a lot of situations, I think that's hard to overcome in a 7-game series. I know that there's some size challenges. I know that there's, there's still maybe some shooting that's not quite where it needs to be. But again, I think that I kind of watched them against Denver. Maybe it was last Saturday or 2 Saturdays ago. And some of the ways that they approached defending Denver was interesting. And I think it gave them a look at some things that they could do in a 7-game series to have success if that was a matchup. Now other teams have gotten better in the West too since that text, but I just think that LeBron and Luka, that's going to be a lot for teams to handle in a 7-game series.
Why?
Well, because I think they both possess the ability to elevate everybody around them quite a bit. And it's really, most teams have one of those guys, but they have two. And so, depending on how they choose to stagger the minutes as the game goes, you're looking at a situation where you never have a minute without one of those guys on the floor. And, most other teams have time where that player is off the floor and they have these, the non-Steph minutes. They have these, they have those types of situations. And so for me, the ability to play 48 minutes of having difference makers on the floor, that goes a long way. Especially when it doesn't have to be 40 minutes of a 40-year-old decision maker that has to be out there.
All right. So these are my concerns. My concerns, obviously, the obvious one is the size. They don't have anything by way of a center rotation. Jackson Hayes, Christian Coloco, Alex Len, that is not a center rotation. They're going to play a lot of small ball with Dorian Finney-Smith and Jared Vanderbilt basically playing in, which against some teams could work. The problem is when you look at the Lakers' path through the playoffs, projected path through the playoffs, pretty much almost all of them have them seeing Denver in the second round. And to me, what we saw against Denver on one Saturday in February is the exact kind of fool's gold that people, not you, Brandon, but people fall for. It's like, oh, they did it, right? Mm-hmm. Not realizing a couple of things. Number one is we know that Jokic, is smart enough to adjust. You can, let's just assume that it's not because he was lazy. It's not because he didn't care. They tried his best, but the fronting strategy that the Lakers used was effective. But he's like an algorithm in that you show it to him. I almost feel like they messed up by showing it to him in a regular season game because now he's got time to think about it. And like, okay, next time you try this is what I'm going to do. Number two, I think Michael Malone is an excellent in-game adjuster. Excellent. One of the best in the league. We don't know what kind of in-game adjuster J.J. Redick is because he's never done it before, respectfully. So in these cases, we look at who are his chief lieutenants. Scott Brooks, Nate McMillan. Two men who are notorious for not making adjustments. In the case of Scott Brooks, the 2012 NBA Finals, right? Eric Spoelstra moves Bosh to the 5, Shane Battier at the 4. Scott Brooks says, no, we won all these games with Perk at 5. I'm never changing. Even though they had the personnel to match that change. And to this day, still defends that move, right? Nate McMillan, I can give you an even more personal example. We played Portland in the first round of the playoffs in 2010. Portland had given us problems all year long. They're up 2-1 in the series. Alvin Gentry makes the move of saying, okay, I'm going to put Grant Hill on Andre Miller, because Andre Miller gave Steve Nash so much problems because Andre was such a big guard. And because we knew, both from their history and because Channing Frye had been in Portland the year before, that Nate McMillan looked at Nick Batum as all you do is sit in the corner. So we're like, your size is never going to come into play. Steve, you guard him. And checkmate. We never lost another game. Those are his two assistants. So the fact that they got a little bit of success defending in that way, I don't know if they'll be able to make the adjustments that Jokic and Michael Malone will be able to make throughout the course of a 7-game series. I'm going to pause there because I have more objections.
Yeah, more objections. Okay. Well, I would kind of counter by saying I felt in watching that game closely that they actually deployed several different strategies that they got pieces of throughout that game. And I thought that the way they defended him in multiple cases was effective. Now, are you ever going to completely stop or slow down him? No, you're not. You're just trying to make him somewhat manageable when he's out there. And he's probably the greatest player on the planet right now for a reason. So I kind of feel like you can't defend him the exact same way every game in a 7-game series. You're going to have multiple ways, multiple looks you attack him. The way I always talk about it is you take the greatest basketball players in the world, and your job as a coach is you got to turn basketball players into thinkers. Because when you turn basketball players into thinkers, you slow them down. And so I think that having multiple defensive strategies against them when you don't have the size to match them is probably the route you're going to have to take. And you're going to have several things in your pocket that you can go to. And I don't necessarily disagree with you about the two lieutenants there, but I have been very impressed by J.J. Redick's creativity through the year and his ability to get his guys ready to go.
Let's not forget that he has another two lieutenants in Luka Doncic and LeBron James in terms of in-game adjustments, right? So good. you talk about Luka Doncic carrying the Dallas Mavericks to the NBA Finals last year and the kind of counters that he had to make in those series. There's that. And also, Luka hasn't even played all that well.
Tom, may I rebut? Yeah, Luka making adjustments. What adjustments did he do in the finals against Dallas? I mean, against the Celtics?
Well, I think an adjustment of having LeBron James this year will be a pretty big one.
This is my. Obviously, they're two of the smartest players in the league right now, in LeBron's case ever. Also, I know that there are players that are smart and say, no, it'll work. I don't need to change anything. Like, if ever there was anyone who believed in self and I don't need to adjust, Luka Doncic for sure fits that mold. The other thing that happened in those finals, Tom, was A Dallas Mavericks three-point offense had been very effective throughout the first 3 rounds of the playoffs, went silent. Well, the Lakers, everyone likes to talk about how good they've been defensively since the trade, and they have. They are 19th in three-point shooting since the trade. Here are their top three-point attempters and their percentages. Luka Doncic averaging 8.8 attempts a game, 27% from three. LeBron James, 7.3 attempts per game, 42.5% from three. Austin Reeves, 7.2 attempts, 31.9. Gabe Vincent, 5.9 attempts, 30.5. Rui Hachimura, 5.4 attempts, 34.7. Dorian Finney-Smith, 4.2 attempts, 31% from three. You get to Dalton Connect, the redheaded stepchild, 3.8 attempts, 40% from three. And then from there on, it's guys that don't really play. This team does not have the shooting. I don't care what Luka
I look
and
at it the
LeBron
opposite way.
They don't have the
this
shooting
team has shown a much better shooting in their careers, that this is just a cold streak, that obviously Luka Doncic is going to shoot 27%.
I don't think Luka is a great shooter. I think he's a great volume shooter, but his percentages don't say that. I don't think Austin Reeves is a great shooter. I think he's a good shooter, but not a great shooter. I think Rui Hachimura has been a good shooter since he got acquired. But that's, again, like a year and a half of information for us. I don't think Gabe Vincent is a good shooter at all, but although he fooled people because of 2 hot rounds in the playoffs a couple of years ago. Dorian Finney-Smith is the only guy I look at as like, yeah, he's way better than that.
I think you look at when you have a major addition like Luka and you're bringing him into a brand new situation, they're having to learn how to play together. In my experience, when you're dealing with shooters and they're shooting maybe not as well as they normally do or are not up to their standards or abilities, a lot of times we look at shot selection as the major culprit as to why the percentages are down and why things aren't going as well as they should have. And when you're trying to fit in somebody new and you're trying to run things around another ball dominant player, defining what is a good shot for him, defining what is a good shot for his teammates in a situation where maybe him and LeBron are on the floor, or what is a good shot for his teammates when it's just LeBron on the floor. Those things, to me, take a little bit of time to iron out. Now, are they going to magically become great shooters? No, they're not. But can they kind of get back towards what they're at? I always say averages are averages for a reason. Can they get back towards what they've always averaged? Maybe, as shot selection starts to figure itself out.
You mentioned shot selection. Dean Oliver just tweeted out, he's the director of analytics over at ESPN, who wrote the book about analytics and basketball on paper. He just tweeted out that the Lakers, with Luka Doncic, has, here it is. Hold on. I'm pulling it up right here. Luka has 19 assists to LeBron, highest of any Lakers combo since the trade. LeBron's shot quality on those assists has been a crazy high 76%, according to Second Spectrum data tracking. And I went further and found that Luka has already assisted LeBron 19 times, which is more than he's assisted Derek Lively. Luka has assisted Derek Lively this season in just 8 games with LeBron. A lot of those are these touchdown passes that I've watched many times over. And Brandon, I still can't see when Luka sees LeBron. I haven't figured it out. Like, when you're watching these two play basketball, is it simply that they have this wavelength that everyone else can't tap into except for Luka and LeBron can tap into? Like, what do they have, a third, fourth, and a fifth eye? Like, what is it?
I think that, they finally found somebody that thinks basketball the same way that they do, which is hard. And I think that, when you look at, everybody always talks about the Olympic team and why all those guys had such a great time together. It's because when Steph and LeBron were around each other, they were finally with somebody that fully understood everything that they understand, not only from a basketball standpoint, but from the celebrity standpoint and what the day-to-day life of being that person is. So, with LeBron and Luka being on the same team, they finally have people that kind of can think and see things the same way that they do, because it's not normal. They're great for a reason, and they see things the way that great players see it. And it's hard for every other player to see it that way and play that way.
Brandon, here's a question for you. I don't think we've ever asked this. How does Steph Curry see basketball? Like, give me an example of a time where he explains something and you're like, holy shit, this guy's thinking of the game in such a completely different way.
Yeah, it's funny because he kind of sees it the way I do, but that's not, it's kind of too long horn there. But
okay, Brandon, someone next
a little
to you.
bit. So somebody almost as good as me at seeing basketball. Steph is almost as good as me. He's always thinking, we're always looking for space. Let's just for instance, let's talk about when he gives the basketball up. Just when he gives it up, we're very rarely looking for space on the same side of the floor. We're always looking opposite, and he's always thinking 2 to 3 passes ahead. He's working through kind of all these different permutations as when he gives up the ball, I can get it here, I can get it here. But his first thought is always, I got to go get somebody else open first. And so he thinks, his way of thinking basketball is, I need to create opportunities for my teammates to create opportunities for myself. And part of that is stature and size and skill set. And I think that, honestly, LeBron James is the same way because he's always been a great teammate, a great facilitator that has worked as hard as he could to get everybody involved. And as much as ball dominant as Luka has been in his career, I kind of feel the same way. Now, his way of creating opportunities for teammates is a little bit different. He has to do it via sacrifice driving. What we term as sacrifice drive is you're driving into an area of the floor where there's not a shot for yourself, but that a hard drive here, you're sacrificing, you're going to get a shrink and you're going to get a move here. Or he creates hockey assists, things like that. With Stephen, the way he sees it differently, I mean, I'll give you an example. I'm starting to do some videos to break these things down for people. He gets into ball screen situations where he will stretch the ball screen out to keep the hard high hedge or the doubled on him long enough, knowing that he's not going to throw that pass to the roller. He's going to hold the double team long enough and he's going to hit a one more. And then there's going to be a diagonal pass to the roller. So he's thinking of how to control and manipulate the help. And he's thinking the next guy's going to make the play. And I kind of think that, LeBron and Luka are on that same wavelength of thinking past their own nose, which I know is kind of a different concept for a lot of players, but they think they play with great responsibility to their teammates, and they play winning basketball based off creating opportunities for other players. Even though their shot numbers might be really, really high, they do that because that's what their team needs them to do to win, on top of creating opportunities. But that's how that's how they see the game and play the game.
So it's funny that you should mention that particular aspect because that was Steve Nash, right? We had a play called Fist Up Short. That was literally, we're going to run a pick and roll. Steve's not going to get the assist on this. He's going to give it to the guy who flashes here, who then hits the roll man as he's rolling. And it's all based on, it's playing on the fears of the opponent, right? They're so worried about this action and this thing right now that they're not thinking 2 and 3 plays in advance, as you just pointed out right there.
Well, and then on top of that, kind of building on what you were saying right there, I mean, as you start to run and you end up running the same actions multiple times, you start to think about how the help is going to react to seeing that action again. And you start to think about, okay, if I'm taking the ball towards the right side of the floor and the guy that's responsible for the weak corner is going to start to tag on that roller, now I'm going to throw that hook pass back over to the weak corner after we run it on the +1 on the dive one time. So Steph is kind of, it's kind of like being an offensive coordinator in football. Sometimes you run the same play a few times just to set up, a reverse, or you set up something going back in the other direction. And there aren't many players that can play with the ball in their hands, do everything they have to do, be a scorer, and be able to think through all those things. And I think that, you look at a guy like Steph, LeBron, Luka. I mean, I don't want to get into mentioning too many because there are other guys out there that can do that. I'm sure I'm going to forget some, but they're just different level thinkers. And a lot of it's experience. It's just, you've seen it. You've had teams take things away from you. You've had to come up with strategies on the fly. It's funny, before Steph ever got into the playoffs, we used to always talk about, he'd always say, well, that's what you have to do in the playoffs, or so I've heard. He didn't really know until he got there. And then he got there a couple of times. And then we started to kind of approach things differently because we saw that, we got into a series with the Spurs and they defended them in a way we'd never thought somebody would defend them. And we had to come up with an entire new way to create space based off of what they did. And it's just different in the playoffs. So you have to be able to think that way to have success in those 7-game series. And to me, having two of those guys, I know they're limited size wise. I know they're limited from a shooting standpoint, but having two of those guys that can think that way on the floor is going to be hard to. It's going to be hard to beat 4 times in 7 games.
Brandon, I want to talk about Steph and the recent addition that he got on his team, a very fiery personality that everyone's looking at like, hey, once this guy came aboard, everything changed. And I'm talking, of course, about Quentin Post. So, Brandon.
So fiery.
Talk to me about Quentin Post, and I'm serious. You've been big on this for a while. Is that Post does change a lot for the Warriors, and we'll get to Jimmy Butler III in a second.
Oh yeah, Jimmy
Quentin Post, dude.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a built-in advantage here because I was at training camp and I was around before training camp, and I got a chance to see Quentin Post work out with the team and go through his individual stuff before the season. I was actually talking with Mike Dunleavy. We were watching him one day. I was like, man, that guy, if he can figure out how to just move and play at the pace you have to play at the NBA level, I think he can be a difference maker for you down the road. I didn't think it would be now. I did not think it would be today. But the way that he is growing into his role and the way that he is, at first he accepted his role, then he starred in his role, and now he's getting the opportunity to expand his role because he's performed so well in it. It's been really impressive. And, I think that there's obviously still some things defensively in terms of diagnosing actions and understanding how to rotate, understanding how to play certain types of action at the NBA level that he still has to learn in order to be able to be effective in the playoffs. But just right now in this regular season, having a stretch 5 out there that is, pretty consistently hitting threes now. And he's even added, cleaning up some junk around the basket that he's done that the past few games. It's been really interesting to watch him grow and watch his confidence grow. It seems like every game I watch him, he's standing a little taller. He's got a new celebration after a three. He's kind of starting to feel himself a little bit. And now you see the Warriors they're looking for him a lot, and he's hitting them.
What happens when Kuminga gets back?
I think you might find out tonight or soon. I was just at shoot around and he was going through a workout. He looked pretty good. They look good. How they handle that, I don't know. I think they're probably going to be a little bit cautious with Kuminga. He's never had an injury like this before. So, he's still, Stephen always says there's a skill to being injured. You have to know how, you got to understand that it's not so much how you feel during the workouts. It's how you feel the next day. It's how your body responds. It's your ability to communicate how you're feeling. So I think that they've been ramping him up. And I watched him do a little bit of 3-on-3 stuff with some of the coaches today. He looked sharp. He looked pretty good. But 3-on-3 with the coaches is not 5-on-5 at the NBA level. So I think I think he's fairly close. And I think that certainly adds another dimension. Now, what role he takes on, I don't know, because they found some units that are working pretty well together.
Brandon, is it weird to say that I feel like the ceiling on this Warriors team is kind of depending on what they do in those non-Steph minutes? Because earlier this season, when Steph would be off the floor, they could not tread water. And it almost beckoned him to be like playing 40 minutes in the regular season. They get Jimmy Butler on the team. And the numbers that I pulled up for Tom the Finder this week I was kind of floored by it, is the fact that Steph and Jimmy Butler on the floor together, they're plus 28. Just raw plus minus, plus 20. They outscored opponents by 28 points in the 149 minutes. That works out to about like a plus 8 net rating. But when Jimmy's playing without Steph on the Warriors, in 92 minutes, they're plus 38, net rating plus 23.
It's all Steph's fault.
Yeah, tell Steph sit down for a while.
Yeah, Steph, maybe you need to move on. Steph is actually hashtag not better. But what are you seeing with Jimmy Butler? And he's the most I don't know. Do you think there's one more polarizing than Jimmy Butler as like a basketball player in the NBA? Because
is it his basketball play though? Like, he's polarizing. I don't think for his basketball play. It's for what happens when he sours on a situation. And then
but he doesn't shoot threes as a guard in a league that it seems like Giannis Antetokounmpo doesn't shoot threes. Okay, that's fine. Other bigs don't shoot threes, but when you have a guard whose entire job is to drive and get to the rim and get foul calls, it is a pretty different archetype than what we've seen in the league.
I think he's a guard, and Brandon, I definitely want to hear what you think about this. But to me, he's a guard in the same way Gary Payton's a guard. Like Gary Payton's a guard, but the Warriors figured out, let's just play him at the 4. He'll defend whoever he defends, but offensively he's going to be our 4-man, and he'll be a roll man, and he'll be in the dunker box and all that stuff, and that led them all the way to a title. Like that realization, one of the things that really helped that year. And I think Jimmy Butler is like imagine Gary Payton was an offensive powerhouse, like less athletic, but like in terms of back to the basket game, getting to the free throw line, dominating in the paint. That's Jimmy Butler. And so we could say he's a guard and he doesn't shoot threes, or we could say he's a really, really good undersized power forward. And in which case you kind of see, oh, wow, he's actually exactly what kind of they need as a counterbalance.
Yeah, he's a really good basketball player. And so, we don't really, I understand the notion of saying guard or big, but to me, he's a really good basketball player. And he's kind of brought something that they were missing. I think that, how much the production has changed since the trade. I don't know. I think that just having a change energized them. And then he seamlessly kind of came in and found his way very quickly. And it's nice to have somebody that gets to the free throw line. It's nice to have somebody that can get there and get there consistently. And he's just brought some toughness. And I think he's enjoying himself. It's, just today, the guy looks like he's genuinely having a really good time. And that's an easy group to have a good time with. It's a group of guys that are professional. It's, Coach Kerr is a pros coach, he's a coach, a player's coach, but he expects everybody to be a professional in the building. And I think that it's a good situation from a personality standpoint, because Steph is a leader. He can kind of mix in with anybody. And, they're energized. I can say that. I felt like they were kind of flat before the trade. And the trade has had an impact from an energy standpoint that I didn't really anticipate, but it's been nice to see.
What is it like having Stephen come back home, at least for this game? You're in Charlotte and you're going to the game, shoot around back home. Don't you kind of wish that you were around Stephen a lot more so you could help, just, hey, I got some ideas. Let's see it out on the floor. Come on. Are you recruiting him to the Hornets? Like when is this going to happen?
No, I think we're good right there in Golden State now, but it's nice to have him here. I can't imagine, all the ways he's being pulled when he gets it. It's kind of crazy. I took my sons to shoot around this morning because I know how crazy the game is going to be tonight. So post game for him, and they got to go to New York tonight because they got a back-to-back in New York tomorrow. Post game for him tonight, I believe, would probably be comprised of a section and a half of people, like a full section and a half of people from family to high school to Davidson to just friends, people that have known him for a long time. So, when he comes into town, I tell my kids, if you're going to see him, you need to go see him before the game, because after the game, he's going to be kind of busy. And on top of that, you guys get to spend all summer with him. So you're kind of, if you don't catch him today, you'll see him in a couple months. But yeah, it's kind of a crazy thing for him to come home.
That's got to be an awesome call to the attendance line. Yeah, they're not going to be in today because they've got to go to shoot around and go watch Steph Curry.
Yeah,
get ready to demolish the Hornets.
Yeah, they get some perks. They've had a good childhood, certainly. The problem is they've known him since, my youngest son's known him his entire life, and my oldest son was too when I started working with Steph. So they don't really know any different. So they're kind of numb to it at this point.
There's a big conversation going on around the league about who's the face of the NBA, who's going to take the throne from Stephen and KD and LeBron. Your kids, who do they latch on to the most? Like which NBA player is biggest among the kids' generation coming up?
Well, I mean, mine, they're still enamored with Steph. Steph's their guy. I think that, you got to understand both my kids are shooters, so they're going to watch guys that shoot the basketball. But if you talk to some of their teammates, I hear a lot of Jason Tatum. I hear a lot of Anthony Edwards. those are those guys. I hear that a lot. I hear, there's some LaMelo balls here in Charlotte. There's some of that, which, we try to watch them.
I would imagine there's a lot more of those in Charlotte just because, he seems to resonate with kids of a certain age. And obviously he's the local guy. I'm surprised. Yeah. I'm actually surprised that Tatum was one of the names because I don't, and this isn't about Tatum as a player, obviously, but I just don't think I see, from when I see kids play, I see a lot more. This is my unofficial, kind of litmus test, the sneakers. I see a lot of Anthony Edwards sneakers. I see a lot of LaMelo Ball, those ugly ass Pumas with they have 8 million colors going on. I see a lot of those. I see a bunch of obviously the Jordans and LeBrons and stuff like that. I don't think I've ever seen anyone wearing Tatums.
I think the Tatum thing around here is there's a Duke connection here. Yeah, there's so we hear a lot of that. So there haven't been many Carolina guys lately, so you're going to get more Duke around here, unfortunately, than Carolina. Hopefully that'll change soon, but I think there's some of that. But with my kids being on the shoe circuits and playing AAU, we definitely see a lot of the Anthony Edwards. That was kind of the popular shoe that we saw when we weren't playing the Under Armour stuff last year. So I think you're right. The shoe stuff tells you a lot about the players.
Well, he had 56 the other night, and we've had you on a bunch of times where it's he continues to surprise me, where you're his coach, his personal skills trainer and coach, and you've known him for as closely as an'ybody has known basketball or him as a basketball player.
All his children's lives, pretty much.
That's right. What'd you see? 56 from Steph, and he's turning 37 here.
They needed all 56 of them. That's what I saw. It was a game where they weren't very good early in the game. And I said this on the radio the other day. To me, momentum in the season is a real thing as a team. And you didn't want to start this 6-game road trip. You just started to kind of build this momentum. You didn't want to start this road trip with a loss in Orlando that was preventable. And so, especially the Suggs didn't play and they're missing some pieces down there. So they needed that not only to win that game, but to keep that momentum kind of going. And then, you had Saturday night where Butler didn't play and they kind of took a small step backwards. But to me, if you go on a 6-game road trip and you get out of it 4-2 or 5-1, you're keeping that momentum going at the right time of the year, especially folding in new pieces where you're trying to work towards figuring out what's going to work in the playoffs. Because I do think that they are now in a much, much better position to be competitive in the playoffs. And I think that the Western Conference, the landscape kind of adjusted a little bit now. I do think that Memphis is fun to watch, and I think they're very good. I think that I love watching Houston play defense. But I just think that, you've got Oklahoma City, who's incredibly dynamic and just loaded at every position. The Lakers and the Warriors and the Nuggets. That's a tough group to battle through.
What I heard there was, I'm not surprised by 56. Yeah, you're just
no. It could happen tonight. With him, it only takes one going in the right way. You listen to guys that play baseball, and you hear them where they talk about when they hit it and they know it's gone because it just hit the bat in the right spot and you barely feel it and the thing goes 450 feet. Yeah. Stephen's kind of the same way. It just takes one basketball going in the net the exact right way, and there's an avalanche coming behind it. And and you can kind of see it. I can see it at least. I can see it in his body language after he hits it.
Is that because you guys are as smart as each other? Yeah, you guys.
That's right. Almost share a brain. He's almost as smart as me. He's close. Almost.
Get it straight.
Almost. Is that as simple as he got the exact formula, and now it's easy for him to Xerox the formula on the release or something like that?
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's, and he even talked about it after the game because they said, hey, what is it about Orlando that, because he's had some big games down there. And he talked about the lighting in Orlando and the way that, the backdrop looks and how the rim looks when he shoots, especially from certain angles. And then we've had the opposite. We've had the Staples Center problem where, there was a time early in his career where we played in the Staples Center against the Lakers because they had the theater lighting. The lighting was different and the way that the backdrop looked was different. And there was an adjustment to make, and he didn't shoot there very well there for a few games, and then he kind of figured it out. So
fix?
Having success. Having that's really the fix. Is having success, seeing a couple go in the right way, and just some of it is just getting past your own mental block on things like that. Like you don't want to start to create excuses for yourself, but even for the greatest player in the world, that type of thing can happen. And it just takes me calling and say, "Will you just make some damn shots, please?" And just put the ball in the basket, and it starts to go in. There you go, man. So it's a simple game. 2 basketballs fit in one rim. It shouldn't be that hard to do. Just put one. I'm only asking you. I tell them all the time, 2 of them fit in there. I'm just asking you to put one in. Just put one in.
There you go.
Yeah, it seems pretty simple. Hey,
I really like this lighting theory, though. This is amazing.
That's a real thing.
I was there. I was there in Boston when he went out to shoot, and he was like, "That rim ain't right." And I'm like, "What?" And they came out and they measured, and I'm like, imagine how fine-tuned you have to be able to eyeball a rim. And it wasn't off by like a foot or whatever. You've been to a park where they got the short rim or whatever. It was like an inch or two. Maybe an inch and a half. And he could tell. He could just look at it like, no, there's something like especially, it sounds egotistical, but it's also like, yeah, it's a great litmus test. Like, why? Well, because I was missing.
That's right. Right. Ball wasn't going in. It wasn't going in the right way. So something had to be off. Something was wrong there.
Well, you remember, Brandon, the strobe light glasses story that I did about how Kawhi Leonard and Stephen used to wear strobe light glasses while they're training. And Michael Jordan used to do this because he was simulating what it was like to see all the camera flashes when he was playing, which is such a flex. Like to be like, yo, when I'm practicing in a practice gym, like everything's so easy because there's not all these camera flashes. So we got to get strobe lights in here to simulate how many people are taking pictures of me when I play basketball.
We've used those glasses quite a bit in the past and still do to this day for different things. So, yeah.
We got to ask about something that Steph's not world-class at, which is dunking. He dunked for the first time on Saturday. And it's because Jerry Stackhouse essentially dared him to do it.
That was the story I got like an hour ago at shoot-around. I asked him, I said, what put it in your head to try to dunk the ball? And he said, well, Jerry Stackhouse told me at shoot-around today that he felt a dunk was coming tonight. So I had to get that done for him. And I think it took a lot of energy out to get that dunk in, but he got up there and got it done. And he dunks at the end of every one of my workouts. I'll say that for 15 years, there's a lob catch and a dunk at the end of every single workout. So I've seen it a bunch. I knew it could happen, but I think he's right. That might be the end of the dunking line from a game standpoint. That one right there in Philadelphia.
Maze, anytime Jerry Stackhouse tells you to do something, you do it, man.
You do it.
It's a good idea.
Immediately,
it's a good idea.
That day.
He is not the guy in the gym you want to mess with. That's not the one. He's not the one to play with. Do you have any
stack stories from back in the day? Like in a...
No, there's some stories that like live in North Carolina legend about Tyler Hansbrough and Jerry Stackhouse. Some of those were good on the Jerry Stackhouse end. Some of those were better on the Tyler Hansbrough end. There's some of that out there, but I just know that everybody in Chapel Hill knows that Jerry Stackhouse is not the guy to play with.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. Hey, Brandon, appreciate you coming by, swinging by, and enjoy the game tonight.
All right, man. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Brandon.
Man, keep your third eye open. That Brandon is... I mean, maybe Stack has the most open third eye that he was predicting Stephen Curry dunking. That's incredible.
He didn't predict it. He just told him to do it.
That's one way to predict it.
If it told me to dunk, I'd find a way to dunk that night. I don't know how. I'll figure it out, though.